This is Carolina This Week. Carolina This Week with Tim McGinnis.
Good morning and thanks for joining us for Carolina This Week. We have another candidate for the 7th Congressional District, a Republican, Renee Culler, and a little bit later we're going to give you a history lesson on WPDE. But first up, Renee Culler, thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
You are one of several Republicans throwing your hat in the ring for the 7th Congressional District. First question for you, who are you and why are you running?
Well, I think the main reason anybody should run is because they want to make the country a better place for everybody to live. We need to send somebody to Washington, D.C. that has, number one, common sense and family values. If you have those two things going to Washington, you can help get America back on her feet. Now, I have three basic parts to my platform. The first part is dealing with corruption that is in the government. The second is regulatory and government reform. And the third one is family values. Let's call this my Herman Cain moment. Everybody has said, if you've got anything you need to get it out, just get it out in the very beginning. And so a lot of people have asked questions, and I think we need to discuss corruption, if you don't mind, for just a moment. My family and I, Tony and I, have 4 daughters, and back on September 1st, 2009, our home and 72 acres in Nacogdoches, Texas was sold at the courthouse, illegally sold at the courthouse. On January the 12th, 2010, I'm sorry, this is difficult, but on January the 12th, 2010, Sheriff Thomas Kearse, who was the president of the Sheriff's Association of Nacogdoches of Texas, started an illegal armed siege of our home and all of our property.
Wow.
My family has seen corruption face to face. For 2 weeks, Sheriff Kearse put an armed deputy at our gate and unloaded everything that we have. All of our personal property he took, with deputies and with inmates in their black and white striped outfits, to storage buildings. And we were not allowed back to our home. Sheriff deputies Bill Murphy crawled up on the top of our roof at our house, broke in to our home through our dormer windows, and nosed through everything that we had. Stop for just a minute and imagine you're here, and when you go back home, you've got a deputy sitting at your gate or at your driveway, and you're not allowed to go back into your house. And he's got a gun, so there's nothing you can do about it. And you find out that they've already entered your home, they've gone through your dormer windows, they didn't get a locksmith, they've admitted that they crawled up on your roof, opened a dormer window, went through an unfloored attic, and nosed through all of your personal property. Now, everything that I had, all of my personal property, this one man that I had never met before went through. It's devastating.
Why did they do it?
Absolutely no legal authority at all to do this. We had had some problems in Texas, and we were in the courts fighting, and we were going up to the 12th Appellate Court in Tyler for an appeal, and before we could reach it, they took possession of our home. We had filed all of our paperwork legally. Everything had gone through the court system like it was supposed to, but they could not allow our case to get to the appellate court, because I don't know that they had the control on the appellate level that they had in the county and local court systems. And I can explain all of that to you. It'll take a while. But just kind of to make a long story short, our Fourth Amendment was violated. We have constitutional issues that are numerous. Our daughters had a yellow lab. That yellow lab was taken to the dog pound. We aren't sure where it's at or what happened to it. Our oldest daughter, Sarah, had received a beautiful paint filly for her birthday. I had a beautiful paint horse, and Layla had a donkey named Chico. All of our animals were taken to the expo center, and I don't know if they were kept or if they were sold or where our animals are at right now.
What were you in the court process for? What is it that led them, at any rate, whether they were justified or not, to do this?
Okay, in Texas, If you're familiar with, are you familiar with split estates?
No.
Okay. Texas is a split estate state, which means you can own property that's from the dirt up, or you can own property below the ground. That's where you get your minerals and natural gas, exactly. Well, everybody in Texas does not own minerals. And when you're an outsider coming into Texas and you have minerals that were given to you at closing, and those minerals are told in the very beginning that they're not worth anything, but all of a sudden they become valuable, they were worth over $200,000, you get a lot of greed, and you get a lot of people that want to take your property. That's where a lot of the corruption started. And people could talk about the good old boy system. Texas wrote the book on the good old boy system. What you see these days here, that's the little rascals. You know, it's not corruption like you see other places, especially in Texas. But on August the 28th, 2010, Nacogdoches County Sheriff Thomas Kearse sold everything that we had, or threw everything else away that they didn't take themselves. I'm talking baby books, all of our clothes, pictures of our family, ultrasounds, christening gowns, everything. When we left Texas to come back to South Carolina to where Tony's family is at, we left with 2 outfits of clothes on our back, and that's pretty much it. Our children have seen things that no adult should see. Our children have seen inmates in their black and white striped outfits going through their belongings. They've seen the sheriff's deputies taking things. It took us forever to get them to trust somebody in a uniform, and we had to explain to them everybody that wears a uniform is not bad. We would stop on the way back from Texas to South Carolina at a Taco Bell because that's pretty much the cheapest place you can eat. And Tony and I would say, okay girls, let's go. Let's get out the car. Let's go in and get something to eat real quick. To see them take everything that they owned and put it in their little arms and try to walk into Taco Bell with it. And for us to say, girls, we don't need to take it. We're coming right back. No, it won't be here. Somebody might come and take our things.
And this was 2 years ago, and now you all are living in South Carolina. You've moved back from Texas to South Carolina, and you're running for Congress.
I am.
Well, we've got that out of the way. We better talk about some issues here in a moment.
That sounds good.
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more about your run for Congress.
Okay.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with Renee Culler, a Republican candidate for Congress. Welcome back to Carolina This Week. Joining me this week is Renee Culler, a congressional candidate for running for the new 7th Congressional District in South Carolina, which will represent the PD and just about all of the Grand Strand. Before the break, we were talking about corruption and what you see as corruption in Texas, and you wanted to make a final point on that.
Yeah, I want to explain that this corruption that we saw in Texas, people have said when you get to Washington and you cross the Beltway, corruption is there too. I agree and I believe it because we've seen it. I'm talking about Texas Governor Rick Perry. I'm talking about U.S. Congressman Louis Gohmert, FBI, Texas Rangers, because people say, why didn't you get help? We went to all of these people, and Texas Governor Rick Perry refuses to meet with us when people in his office have spoken with us and he will not allow a meeting with our family. And all of these crimes were committed under his watch in Texas.
You're in South Carolina now,
Mm-hmm.
running to represent the people of South Carolina.
Exactly.
Let's talk about some of the issues that are being talked about in this race, corruption notwithstanding.
Right.
I-73.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about building an interstate through here? What about bringing jobs, which is something that the people who live here really want to see a chance for employment?
I am a cautious advocate of I-73. I can explain a little bit if you would like. I think instead of us having I-73, an interstate called I-73, we need to have an interstate called Interstate to Prosperity. I-73 is going to cost a lot of money to bring in, and where I think it could bring jobs in, but I don't know how quickly those jobs are going to come to the 7th District because I've been told it's going to take 30 years possibly for jobs and for the interstate to be completed. I think when you look at the people of the 7th District, what the people need for the 7th District is education to be prepared for those jobs. You've got constituents in Marion, Mullins, Dillon, and all over the 7th District that used to work in factories and industries. They know how. And you've got buildings that are vacant. And I think you need to take some of that money and better the roads that we already have here and get these people working. And when you cut back regulations, and I've worked with EPA, FDA, ATF, OSHA, DOT on a federal level. There's not very many candidates, and I don't know if there are any candidates in this 7th district race that has actually worked with the federal government and accomplished anything so that they can understand how the federal government actually works. And you've got to be able to understand and cut regulations back. I've worked on the side of industry, keeping industry in compliance with these federal regulations. Once you cut the regulations back that are irresponsible, industries can come back in and these people can get to work. Once we get the people working, we can fund Social Security, we can build our taxes back, and then we can have I-73 come in.
So you're not for cutting all regulation, but
not cutting all regulations.
Maybe a more common sense approach to regulation?
A common sense approach. You've got to understand what is irresponsible and what's responsible. You have to cut the irresponsible regulations back. And there's a happy median there. You don't need somebody that says we're going to cut regulations back and we don't really care what happens to the economy. You've got to have somebody that wants the economy and the environment to flourish. And irresponsible regulations do not allow the economy to flourish.
Or somebody in Congress will deal with all sorts of national issues. In this past week, all the troops came out of Iraq. There's still going to be an American contingency there with the embassy. But what do you think about the war in Iraq? Was it time for it to end?
Personally, I would love to see every American troop come back to the United States to be with their families here in the United States. With me being a public civilian, and not being in Congress and not being part of the, I guess, the information that Congress is given on actually where everything stands in the Middle East and everywhere else, I don't think I'm capable to make that decision right now. On a personal level, I can tell you I would love to have all of our troops back. But on a security level, a national security level for our country, I don't know if it's time yet or not because I'm not privy to that information.
How about health care? That's something else that a lot of people talk about. Most Republican candidates that come in here, and even one of the Democratic candidates who's come through here says they would work to undo health care, the Obamacare,
yeah,
so to speak.
I think Obamacare needs to be repealed just like everybody else. And I think when you get to Washington, there's always plans. You know, everybody has an idea of how they need to do it. I am not a doctor to understand what doctors go through. I've spoken with doctors, I've spoken with insurance agencies that are on the medical side, and Obamacare, I can tell you, is not the way we need to go. So it needs to be repealed.
What else would you want to do for the 7th District? It sounds like you have a history in Texas. Do you know this district well enough, do you think, to represent it? Or are you going in there maybe with more of a personal agenda than one for the entire area?
Perfect question. I grew up in Georgetown County. I graduated from Pleasant Hill High School when it still existed. I went to Coastal my first 2 years. I went to Carolina my last 2 and got a degree in chemistry. After I finished college, just like a lot of other people here in this area that go off to school and get their degrees, there's not enough jobs here. I worked at 3V Inc. in Georgetown for about 6 or 8 years, and then Tony and I were married and we moved to Nashville, and then I transferred to Houston with my job. And I know the PD. I grew up on a farm. I grew up with my parents having a place here at the beach. I know the best of both. I know the intercoastal waterway on the left or on the east and on the west side. I'm part of the PD. Basically, I am the PD. You know, when Tony and I got married, and his family was from Statesville and from the mountains, and we would go up. To me, they were mountains, they were hills to them. And I told him, I said, I'm a beach babe. I'm not used to the mountains. But I grew up in the country in Georgetown County. I'm a true native that was born in Georgetown Hospital.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask you the last question that I ask every candidate, and I think you probably touched on some of it in that answer, but why should I vote for you?
Because I'm qualified. There's not another candidate in this country that has faced the corruption that my family has faced and has faced it head on, and that has tried to be destroyed, and they keep bouncing back. We're like the little Energizer Bunny. We keep coming back, and we're going to keep fighting until we get everything taken care of in Texas. And when we get that taken care of, and while we're taking care of it, we're going to fight the corruption that I hear about in Myrtle Beach, in Washington, D.C., and I understand what happens to families when they are devastated by the corruption, and they can't do anything about it. I understand regulations and where they need to be reformed, and I understand family values. And until we get the government out of our homes and we tell the government that they're Cinderella, it's midnight and it's time for you to leave our home and go back, we aren't going to get ahead. We've got to have somebody that understands those three important values to be able to get ahead. And I think I'm the candidate that can do it. No, I know I'm the candidate that can do it.
All right. Renee Culler, Republican candidate for the 7th Congressional District, thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the guy who's usually behind the camera is going to come in front of the camera to talk about a special you can watch later this morning on WPDE about the history of WPDE. We'll be right back.